Hi there guys, and welcome to today's live stream. It is the 21st of April 2020, and if you hadn't already heard from any of our emails or social posts today, we're really excited to announce that we were the winners of this year's Queen's Awards for Enterprise and in the Innovation category. So it was basically for us and our use of technology inside the clinic at the Mayfair Clinic, and using that to help patients deal with their back and neck pain. And you can read more about it on our website, and we'll be putting out content over the next week or so about that, but we're super excited. It's an awesome award, and really excited to share it with everyone. So that's that announcement out of the way, and today's topic we're going to be talking about the weather's really nice outside, and we'll be talking about people going out into their garden, doing a bit of gardening, but the risks of potentially getting some back pain there in doing so. So we want to really help you guys avoid that, understand a little bit more about it. We've got the spine here again today, so we'll go through all of that there. So in essence, for today's live stream, I'll go through the topics that you can see on the screen now in a good bit of detail, and then we've got that Q&A at the end, and you might notice somewhere down just about there, that's the Queen's Award emblem. So we're allowed to use that for the next 5 years, which is awesome, just to sort of show the recognition that we won that award. So really awesome stuff. We're super excited and proud about it. So anyway, today we're going to be covering why gardening can be bad, specifically for your back, how, the mechanics of the processes of gardening, particularly with reference to people that are maybe a little bit older. We'll touch on a few points there, how you can then make it better, because the reality is it's perfectly okay to do gardening, but if we can make a few small alterations, then we're going to be a lot better off in our lower back, and that is really going to help allow you to do what you like to do, take care of the garden, whether it's planting vegetables and food, or whether it's just flowers and those sorts of things for enjoyment. Either way, let's do it safely so that it doesn't become something that is a problem for your back. And then finally, a really awesome gardening routine. You might recognize parts of it, and of course you can get into our Back in Shape membership site, the basics section, because that is essentially the routine that we'll cover at the end of this. So if you've got any questions throughout here, do please post those in the comments section below, and Lara will be able to read those out as we get to the end of the video, and I'll do my best to answer all of the questions as helpfully as I can. So first and foremost, why gardening can be bad. So in a lot of cases, we're doing a lot of stuff on the ground. It might be just something like weeding, which obviously isn't particularly strenuous on the back, or it might be digging and planting larger shrubs or vegetable patches, etc. And that can involve a little bit more exertion, physically speaking. But the main problem with the gardening is that if we're doing it, and say we're doing the weeding, and we're stood up straight, oh, that's a bit close, and we're bending down, we're putting a lot of flexion through that spine. And this is a real problem, because it's not just generally straight flexion, it's going to be flexion with a little bit of twisting left and right, and that really puts a lot of pressure on these discs down the bottom here, particularly the 5S1 and the 4-5. So if we don't have enough flexibility in our hips, we're going to be pivoting all from the back, and that's going to put a tremendous amount of pressure there, and you may be staying in that position for a little while. And if you've got a history of back pain, this can really start to set things off. And the interesting thing about how these things can set off is that it'll be a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe you feel literally just a tweak at the time of doing the gardening, but it's not till the next day that becomes a problem. And we explore this in other live streams and in our other videos, that the reason for this is that we don't have the best blood supply in that lower back. So when you do injure any of these structures, it takes a little bit of time for that inflammation to build up to a sufficient level. And it might be that you've done the gardening now, it's 12:49, we started the live stream a little bit early today, and you go back in the house for lunch, and then a couple of hours later you're like, oh, I can't get out of my chair. Or it could be the next morning getting up. So a lot of times people don't necessarily attribute the gardening to being as much of a problem as maybe it was, because of that delayed reaction. So be mindful of that. That forward bending and twisting motion is something you really want to try your best to avoid, because it puts an inordinate amount more pressure on those discs. Now, what can we do, coming back to the topics, what can we do to make it better? Well, there's a number of things, and I'll start by removing one of those things, because if you're a slightly older person, you've got maybe knee replacements, the first recommendation to go on one knee is going to be difficult for you. It may not necessarily be possible, so you need to explore their ways around there, possibly wearing knee pads or something like that that'll support a bit of cushion, or finding some other way to go down into a sort of a squatting position or something like that to keep your back in a better position. So as you go down, you might go into a squat position where we're still reasonably well aligned and able to still do that movement or still get down onto the ground, but just thinking and being more mindful of our back. If we absolutely can't do that, then the stuff I'll cover in the end of this video is more important, because that's going to be things that you must do after your gardening to really help decrease the likelihood of any tweaks or minor strains building up into a problem that's more severe. But assuming you don't have any knee replacements and you are able to move reasonably normally, then taking a knee when you're going to be doing anything on the ground is important. Kneeling down is important. Yes, you're still going to be doing a little bit of forward bending, but try and set things up so it's in front of you, whatever you're doing, and you're going straight forwards to minimize the multiple factors that can contribute to the lower back. So if we're doing a bit of forward bending, it is okay. As a human being, we are allowed to forward bend. If our body can do it, we can do it. But it's repetitive forward bending with twisting that's the worst. So if we can at least position our workstation or the piece of ground that we're addressing right in front of us, we're going to be able to just go straight down and straight back up again and put minimum excess pressure on those discs by just using one lever rather than bending and twisting and fiddling around. So that's one quick strategy. The other one is mix up what you're doing. Don't decide you want to dig a massive hole all in one go. If there's any way of maybe going back and forwards from it, that would be helpful. Especially if it's lovely weather like it is today. It's not going to rain today, hopefully, so you can do things sparingly and just give yourself a bit of time to go through that, especially if you have some existing back pain. That's sort of another tip. Pace yourself. Don't necessarily try and just do it all in one go, get it done quickly. Do pace yourself, that's quite important. But being mindful of that lower back, the main thing that you want to avoid when you're gardening is just avoiding bending and twisting, because those are the things that bother the back the most. We want to make sure we keep our core engaged throughout that movement. And if possible, this is a tip for more longer term, we want to improve the flexibility and range of motion of our hips, particularly the hamstrings, because those are going to allow, if we make the hamstrings more flexible, obviously this is the back of the spine here, then it means that this hip can come up higher before the back starts to have to bend. Whereas if the hamstrings are very limited, then the back's going to bend straight away and therefore create more trouble or more increased force and pressure on the lower back sooner in the range of motion. So having nice and flexible hips is going to be helpful for the back and for the hips themselves. So try and work on that hip flexibility if it's something that is currently limiting you in terms of your general range of motion. So that's really important. And then we come to the end of the post-gardening routine. Now, if you feel you've tweaked your back, this is 100% you need to do this. If you haven't, I'd still suggest you do. At the moment it's locked down, so we get that one bit of exercise a day. I've been doing run in the morning, which has been hard because it's something very different for me, but enjoyable. Every time I get back in, I get on this rolled up towel and I do the work, and I do my stretching later on in the day. But every morning when I'm doing the run, as soon as I get in, get on the towel. I haven't tweaked my back, haven't hurt my back. Maintenance and care of self and a proactive approach to your back is so much better than doing gardening 5 days on the trot, thinking you're fine, doing nothing, and then you get in trouble. So a proactive approach is always the best, and it's so much better if people don't get back pain than by maintaining a good state of health than letting back pain come on and then reacting to it. So that's really, really important. Now, the exercises are in our membership site. So if you haven't seen that, you can find those at www.backinshapeapp.com, but I'll cover them now and why. We've got some core exercises. Learning to engage your core is really, really important. If we're going to be lifting and bending and moving, then having a strong and an ability to engage that core effectively to provide a corset-like strength and support for your lower back whilst you're picking plants up, whilst you're moving trowels and shovels, etc., is going to be really, really helpful to protect you. They're your own muscles. You don't need an external support belt. You need to build up your own muscles. So that's the first exercises that we would recommend, is this core engagement. And again, you can read more on the website about it. We'll put a link, Lara will put a link in the description and underneath this video so people can see those. So those core engagement exercises. Then we want to do regular hip mobility work. So that's going to be stretching the hamstrings through here. And if you haven't seen it, last week or the week before we did a live stream video on hamstring stretches and a few different ways to do those hamstring stretches, so definitely check that one out. It might be worth putting a link to that, Lara, in the description as well. Links to the hamstring video. And then some glute stretches and hip flexor stretches. The hip flexor stretches, if you've got knee replacements or find it difficult to kneel, maybe a bit of a challenge, but using a cushion or a pillow to support and protect that knee will be perfectly fine. So you can do those like that. And then the final one that we recommend is the towel exercise, which is awesome. You must place this in the right position. So we find these two bony bits, the dimples at the base of your spine. These are called the PSIS, is posterior superior iliac spine. Bit of a mouthful, which is why I call it PSIS, is all the dimples, which is much easier to learn. And then we come up about an inch, and that's the bottom part of the spine, about level with what we call the hips. This is actually the iliac crest, this bony bit here, which you can feel when you dig in at the side. And that is the level that the towel goes at, right in here, like that. And what that does is that opens out the curve, takes pressure off the discs, and we discussed this in one of the other live streams as well, the actual mechanics of this working, but it's a very, very good exercise. We're not doing any forward bending, any further forward bending or stretching out like that. Please, please, please avoid that. Those muscles may well be tight, but they need to relax, not be stretched further. You'll have done more than enough stretching whilst you've been doing your gardening. So please follow that routine. Check it out. If you're really interested in doing it, you can sign up for free for the basic Back in Shape membership site, which has all of these exercises on with videos, so you can understand exactly how you're doing them and how you're supposed to do them. And I would really urge you to do that as a routine at the end of every single day's gardening. Even if you're doing multiple bits, you're doing some in the morning, some in the afternoon, do it as a way of interspersing something good in amongst that demand on your body. Because for a lot of people that have been housebound for maybe the last couple of weeks, getting out into the garden, if you're lucky enough to have one, you'll see our garden on the thumbnail if you're watching this, our huge garden, and you know how funny that is if you actually have a look at the thumbnail afterwards. It's quite small. It's a small balcony. But nevertheless, if you have been stuck in and you're getting out in the garden, doing a lot of work, you're going to enjoy yourself because it's a beautiful day today. And you could get carried away a little bit and do a little bit more than your body's willing to do and pay for it tomorrow. So do those exercises. They will help you. They're very important. Follow the instructions of the videos. And that is it today from me. Over to everyone else for some Q&A.
Yes, I've got a good question here from Ollie.
Awesome.
Are the exercises good to do as a warm-up before you do some gardening?
I think probably I would say all of them apart from the towel. The towel I would say is kind of a little bit pointless to do before, but definitely mobilizing those hips a little bit, loosening them off will be helpful, especially if you haven't been particularly active in the morning. And doing some core engagement to just wake the brain up more than anything else would be a good idea. I think that the towel will be fine. I don't think you'll have more bang for your buck if you do it at the start. If you do those exercises at the start, I would definitely recommend them afterwards. But it's all about trying to make the exercises as not so intrusive on the individual that they're so overbearing that they can't get done. So if you wanted to split the routine up and do something before, I'd say do the core engagements exercises and the hip mobility stretches before with the towel afterwards. That you might find is a nice way of doing it, to break it up and to make it most effective for you for the purposes of gardening.
And I guess this is not only applicable to gardening, it's applicable to even if you're kind of walking around.
Yeah, this applies to anything.
Walk.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I do the routine after a run. I don't necessarily do the core engagement because it's a bit simplistic for the stage that I'm at. But if you haven't done that exercise before, you should at least be able to technically do it correctly. A lot of people struggle. Even people that you would be surprised at. I've had people that are former powerlifters struggle to do that particular exercise. So it is something that people take for granted. They don't do it correctly. So at least go through the motions of doing it a couple of times. Yeah. And then there are more advanced exercises for the person that is active. Yeah. But I would say that the towel is just a fantastic way of undoing some of the compression and load that goes through the back during any exercises.
Just even a tip for if you're going for a long walk.
Yeah, long walk,
We've been on our long walks. If I feel my back is not feeling very good, you always just say tighten your core, and I do that for a couple more steps, and it feels good
because everything's just getting loose, and by re-engaging and providing the stability for your back, it is good. And people don't realize that actually going for a long walk if it's a bit different from your normal routine, this is in London as well, where it's reasonably flat, but the parts that aren't flat, you notice it. But if you're out in the country doing walks and there's in much more hilly areas, there's going to be a lot of pressure going through those lumbar discs, especially if you're not used to doing that. And the uneven ground as well, going through the sacroiliacs as well. So definitely doing these and not underestimating the demand on your body of an extended walk for an hour or so.
Cool, got another question here. I know that you usually recommend ice if you tweaked your back. Would a hot shower be counterproductive after gardening?
Yes.
Okay.
So the question there was, would a hot shower be counterproductive after gardening? Your muscles are more than warm enough. There's absolutely, a nice shower would be perfectly fine. But after the shower, I would definitely put some ice on the lower back. That would be fine. You could, and this risks getting a little bit more complicated, but what you could potentially do is after you finish, you want to freshen up, you've been in the garden, you're all dirty, having a warm shower, absolutely no problem. Maybe doing a bit of stretching of your stretching routine immediately after that, and then going into using the ice last thing after you've finished on the towel. 3 to 5 minutes with the ice again inside the membership area that I mentioned. It's got all the information on our guidance with regards to icing the lower back, but generally the rule of thumb is heat's great for warming up the muscles and getting them warm, but once they've done their work, what does a footballer, for example, do after a workout? They do a cool down. They don't go and jump in a warm shower, although they will have a shower. The main emphasis is allowing that body to return back down to a normal temperature. Having a warm shower and then going and sitting nice wrapped up warm on the sofa for half an hour, 40 minutes or longer is a great way to really allow these symptoms to creep up on you very, very quickly, and you might get in a bit of trouble doing that, so I'd be careful of that.
Awesome. Last question. What about upper mid-back pain from gardening? Any sort of tips?
Yeah, so a lot of people, if they've got an increased kyphosis, so basically this section here might be rounding a little bit too much. You can see what's happening there. All of the movement's going through the pivot point, which is this part here. So it might be that you've got a bit of rounded back there anyway when you're standing, and when you're then bending, you're pivoting at one particular point in the thoracic spine, and that point is getting a bit worn out, which is why you're getting a bit of symptoms there in the mid-back. So in that instance, the main focus really would need to be looking into some sort of postural exercises to actually support that. And again, we covered some postural exercises earlier in the last few weeks on the live stream, so I'd definitely go and look back through those, because a simple routine to strengthen up that mid-back is most likely going to be what's going to give you the greater relief. You can actually take the towel and move it up to that point to actually act as an opposing pivot, so it actually comes to here to just help open that out. It's often quite comfortable at the time. You do it for maybe 15-20 seconds just to open it back out again, but you really need to look into actually strengthening up that posterior chain to make sure that doesn't happen in the long term. And unfortunately, your muscles grow quite slowly, relatively speaking, so doing that for the next 2 or 3 weeks, you should really start to notice some increase in durability. You can do it for longer before you start to get the back pain up there in the mid-back. So that's my best recommendation there. If it is a bit painful, then by all means get a bit of ice on there as well, and focus on staying upright afterwards. Don't get in and then start, getting in front of the computer slouched over, because that's going to reinforce that that stress point on that middle back.
One more question from Ono. She has asked, when you feel pain in your lower back and upper back towards your shoulder, do you still need to do stretches?
So if it's the upper back, so if it's the lower back, as in the lower back that we've discussed in this video, I would follow the advice that I've given here. Get in the membership site, do those exercises for that part. If we're talking about pain now between in the shoulder region, as in up over here on the back, around the shoulder blade, then that's more likely to be a non-related area. It's maybe related to the neck more so than the actual lower back. You don't really get referral up like that. There will be mechanical strain, so it might be that if you were doing gardening, you're bent over challenging your lower back, but then you're looking in different directions with your neck and you're straining your neck as well, so it's two separate injuries occurring simultaneously. So I definitely look at considering some of the neck exercises that we've covered in one of our live streams on how to relieve neck pain. That would be really helpful for you. Look at those and try those consistently for a couple of days, 2 or 3 times a day. It's the towel and band exercise for the neck, and then I would follow these instructions 2 or 3 times a day as well, and I'd be using a little bit of ice on the neck here, not on the shoulder, here, and on the lower back. And if you do that consistently every day, 2 or 3 times a day, for 3 or 4 days, reevaluate how things are after that. It's no good with any of these things doing it one time and expecting things to change. You have to do it consistently to actually have an effect. And also pay attention to how you're using your body on a daily basis. What are we doing? Are we sitting well? Are we doing repetitive tasks? Are we on the phone like this or other activities? Or are we in bed like that? Those sorts of activities need to be looked at to potentially adjusted, because they will be contributing to the problem. Any other questions?
No, I think that is everything. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I hope that last answer was helpful as well. And thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for tuning in. And again, if you're watching this after the fact, we've done today's live stream a touch early. If you are watching this after the fact, then put any comments in the comment section below. Laura and I have a look through those every day, and potentially we'll use your questions as the next live stream topic. So thanks for watching. Please share or subscribe.
It is all about neck pain.
Oh, just a note, first time that we've known this in advance. Tomorrow we are going to be talking about neck pain.
Yeah.
So in answer to that last question, tune in tomorrow as well, because we'll go into that in a little bit more detail for you. But until then, have a great day, a great afternoon, and stay safe when you're gardening.